Okay, thank you. Welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Audit and Ethics Committee meeting this Thursday, 4th of November. I'm Paul Dudfield and I'm the chair of this committee. The meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, if you wish to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. This will allow the camera to pan in your general direction. Before we begin the formal agenda, I'm obliged to read out the following fire notice. There is no fire drill. Thank you. Welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Audit and Ethics Committee meeting this Thursday, 4th of November. I'm Paul Dudfield, the chair of this committee. The committee has been web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, if you wish to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. This will allow the camera to pan in your general direction. Before we begin the formal agenda, I'm obliged to read out the following fire notice. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, then please could I ask that you make your way out of the building, down the main staircase and out of the main doors of the town hall and congregate at the entrance to Caldecott Park. An officer of the council will give instructions on when it is safe to return to the building. Okay, moving on to the agenda. The first item of business is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on 29th of July 21. Are we happy that I sign those minutes as a correct record? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, second item is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
One apology for tonight's meeting from the Vice Chairman, John Eaves.
Thank you. Okay, item 3, declarations of interest. So are there any declarations as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for members in respect of item A, non-pecuniary interests, B, pecuniary interests, or C, notice under section 106, Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax? Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 4 of the main agenda then, which I think is over to you, Aftab.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a report in relation to an update to the Councillor Code of Conduct. As detailed within the report, it is a matter that full council is delegated down to the Audit and Ethics Committee. And as set out within the recommendation and the report, it is for the committee to determine whether to adopt the code or not, and as per the recommendation, an amended LGA Code of Conduct for recommendation to full council. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Aftab. Do we have any questions for Aftab? Councillor Burnt.
Thank you, Chair. I don't actually have any questions as such, but one or two suggestions and comments. Is this the forum to do that now, or?
Yes, Councillor Byrne, happy to take any comments, and thereafter, if agreed by the committee, that can potentially formulate an amended recommendation for recommendation to full council.
Okay, thank you, Aftab. Just a few comments. If I'll try and get through them quickly. I think the report is very good. I did manage to see it some time ago when it first came out from the LGA, so I've had time to absorb it, as I'm sure my colleagues here have as well. Just a couple of observations running through it very quickly. On sheet 11 of 277, I think that was an interesting point there. Disclosable pecuniary interests which directly relate, one side, or only affect people's interest, pecuniary interest. I think that was an interesting division. We don't have that at the moment, so I don't have an issue with that. I think the one I have a slight issue with, and I'd be interested in other people's comments, regarding gifts to councillors. I think it was set, or a suggestion of £50. I did pick up in some of the comments made, I think, by members of this council, and I believe parish councillors. One or two suggested a lower figure. Personally, I would be for a lower figure, but I'd be interested in other comments. I rather felt £50 was pushing it a little bit. And looking at the comments made by members, I picked up on two of them. Members should be entitled to a private life. Totally agree with that. And another one said the code should only apply when members are acting in their capacity as members. I don't know about my colleagues here, but when you're a councillor, you tend to be on duty 365 all day. Purely because when somebody has an issue, they phone you at 7 in the morning or 10 at night. You're not limited to a 9 till 5. But I understand what they're saying. And I just wonder whether it would be worthy of some kind of an extra comment in the Code of Conduct, something along these lines, which I've just jotted down. When councillors are not on duty, as they've put it here, though I personally feel we always are expected to uphold normal standards of decency and probity expected of all citizens in their private life. In other words, you're not exonerated. You can't go up the town centre and smash things up. You're still expected to act with a level of probity in your private life. And I just wondered whether there ought to be something in there that if members do breach the code of conduct or the codes of conduct, they could be referred to the monitoring officer under the Constitution's rules, which are part 4G of the standing orders, after which disciplinary action could be taken. I don't think there's any warning in there that it could lead to further action unless you abide by the rules. And I think it's section standing order 4G, isn't it? I also picked up that people made comments about abuse online, which is very much a topic of the moment. I don't know whether that should be highlighted any more, though, than any other forms of abuse that people can experience. Again, I'd be interested in what people feel. It's very much the topic of the moment, but I don't know whether it warrants a separate paragraph purely on that topic. So I think there's a few issues there. And I don't actually know the answer to this one, though. There's quite a case going on at the moment in Parliament. Is there any form of a recall position where it could force a by-election if somebody's really stepped out of line? Sorry to hog the microphone.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. So I guess I'm asking, do we have any comments on Andrew's suggestion? So the first one, the £50 limit. Is there a view that should be reduced? Or is there a view it should stay at 50? Councillor McQueen, sorry.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Councillor Byrne. I think £50 is rather high for a borough councillor, and I would expect councillors to be reporting gifts of anything from £5 or £10 upwards. Realistically, I think that would be more appropriate for our position.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I think been a councillor for well over 30-odd years. I'm surprised that we are here with, looking at the code of conduct for members, and just Andrew, just looking this way, probably asking certain questions. As far as I'm concerned, about having a private life, I don't have a private life, because once you are in the public domain, I wouldn't call it you get accosted in the street or anything, but people know who you are. And, just the right man is a statement that comes out. Councillor, I need something doing. I was just walking, taking a picture about an issue in one street, and 2 or 3 people came. Somebody rang me up on Monday, have an issue, but they didn't want to be seen by the resident because they were antisocial behavior. Rang me up. I said, I'll meet you anywhere. And they ring you all hour. They cancelled the meeting yesterday morning at half an hour to go. I said, look, today I'm not going to come because it's Diwali, etc. But Monday, Tuesday. So our behavior is not, like Andrew is referring to antisocial behavior. It's our, need to serve people is override some other thing. And there is no, this thing rings anytime. If somebody rings me, middle of the night or Saturday, I will answer it, because that's what public service is. People expect. When they go out knocking on the door, they say they only come once in a while. And by doing this, people know that you are approachable. So in terms of some of the issue that we are sort of turning the code of conduct into sort of like we have a private life and all that. We are not. We are public figures. And after such a long service, I don't expect anything less, So I don't think I had any desire or need to use the code, but being a senior guy in a group, there are times when members go out of line. And generally, it can be resolved with the officers and the leadership, and, try not to repeat it, because it doesn't need that code to drive the behavior of the members, because I think we are sensible enough, like the officers, you all treat people with respect. And sometimes public have a frustration, and they get angry, and sometimes they just want to talk to you. Yeah, it's not they want you to do something. I get approached even if I'm drinking and whatever, but I will give time. And I think it's a lesson to learn from all the new members that you are a public figure and you work in 7 days a week, I can assure you. Yeah, so don't get this idea you need the code and you need a private life and etc. So I think we've gone overboard revisiting and again. Its code has never been revisited, because when we went into public life, there is an expectation what you are as a member, and you behave responsibly, and you have a duty to serve, and that's what we are. You know, we are public property at that point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ish. Aftab, do you want to come back on that and Andrew's points?
Yes, happy to, Chair, just to address some of the points that have been covered so far. So in terms of the first point that Councillor Byrne raised in terms of interest, as set out within the LGA code, it does seek to apply a wider application and registration of interest, but as per part 7.4 of the report, it is proposed that wider registration of interest isn't adopted simply because it does create uncertainty. As detailed within the report, the present system in terms of the declaration of pecuniary interest and non-pecuniary interest is sufficient, and on that basis we are recommending that that particular element of the code is not adopted. In terms of when the code is applied, obviously that's a key point for councillors, and as Councillor Byrne and Councillor Mystery have outlined, from their perspectives, they're always on duty. But just to apply the actual code and what's set out within the code, what it sets out is that there must be a direct relationship between a function of the local authority and the way in which a councillor is acting. Provided that is the case, then the code is engaged. And following the draft LGA code in the summer of this year, the additional guidance was issued by the LGA to clarify that particular point and to provide some reassurance to concerned councillors who felt that they were entitled to a private life. In terms of the other point that was raised in terms of the complaint process, within this is the actual code of conduct, which is, if approved, is required to be adhered to by all councillors, but there is a separate section of the Constitution which outlines the complaint process. That isn't part of this recommendation in this report, and that will remain as it is, and we will undertake complaints and investigation process as per the present Constitution. And just in terms of a final point of Councillor Byrne raised as to whether we are able to remove councillors, I think that's the query that was being raised as part of any complaint process. There are only limited powers to remove sitting councillors, and those primarily relate to matters relating to criminal matters and imprisonment. But outside of that, our powers are limited. So hopefully that clarifies that. And in terms of the gift threshold, if required, we can look into that further, and when we present this to full council, we can put forward that there is the recommendation that should be reduced. Hopefully that clarifies all the points, Chair.
Thank you, Aftab. Andrew, did you want to come back on those first of all?
No, I don't think so, Chair. And I appreciate we're not looking at the standing orders tonight, but in them it mentions in referrals for investigation, an investigator would be appointed. Just for my own knowledge, would that be an outside investigator, or would it be the Appeals and Grievances Committee?
Yes, happy to come back on that, Chair. That is, in terms of the appointment of the investigator, that is the appointment by the monitoring officer, i.e. being myself, and that can be internal or external. We take into account the particular matter that's being investigated, how serious it is, and if we have the expertise internally, then by all means we will use internal resources if they are available. But otherwise, external resources are in some cases used.
Thank you, Aftab. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Aftab, and thank you, Andrew. Councillor McQueen, Councillor Watson-Merritt, any points? No. So I'm just unclear on where we are with the gift thing, the gift level, sorry, not the gift thing. So are we saying that we would like the code to be amended to reflect a lower amount?
Chair, I wouldn't touch £50. And I mean, it's sufficient. It's £5 has got no value, I think, and it just get into muddle to bring in £5. You know, buying somebody a drink, you're lucky if you can get a drink for a £5 nowadays someplace. So it doesn't really warrant changing that 50. I think it came from the parish council. I get it. Yeah. Yeah, but it's not from this chamber. I don't think so. Anyway, it's never been raised. Aslan.
Can I just perhaps make a suggestion, Chair? If the recommendation is as per the report, within the body of the report, we can make a reference to the point that it has been raised, and perhaps it needs further analysis outside of this particular report and recommendation. Because as Councillor Mystery says, if you are to decrease that threshold, then it can potentially create all kinds of issues and difficulties for councillors.
Thank you again, Aftab. Okay. Sorry, yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just while we were debating this, I looked on the Local Government Association website under the Code of Conduct for councillors, elected councillors. Point 10, under gifts and hospitality, there is already 10.2 that as a councillor, I register with the monitoring officer any gifts or hospitality with an estimated value of at least £50 within 28 days of its receipt. So I think that's already set down by the association. And obviously, as councillors, we've already signed our names to that Code of Conduct and Ethics. So I think that's probably where it's come from and been linked together with an overall picture. And to some people that would look like a lot of money, and yes, we can't judge, because to some people it is a great deal of money and others wouldn't accept it in any event. So I think we should leave it where it sits, because it's already set in law. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, taking that point then, Aftab, and your suggestion.
Yeah, shall I just come back on that particular point, just a point of clarity? In terms of the LGA, that is a recommendation. It is for local authorities themselves to set their own relevant threshold of gifts and hospitality, and that's what's set out within the code, and it's for the local authority to determine themselves the relevant threshold.
Okay, thank you, Aftab, for clarifying that. Okay, if there's no further questions, the recommendation is that we recommend to Council that the LGA code, as amended and detailed within the report, be adopted. So are we happy? Are we content with that as the recommendation? And if so,
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair. Yeah.
Okay, and do we vote on that? Yes, if we could vote then please, that we carry that recommendation. Yeah, okay, thank you everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Aftab. Aftab, you're welcome to stay with us, but you're equally welcome to go now, if that suits you. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to the agenda then. So item number 5 is approval of the financial statements. So John, do I come to you, John, or are we going to Martin to... Okay, I guess
Probably
this is...
best to go to Martin at the first instance, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So Martin, I guess this might be a double act with you and Jim from External Audit.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just do a quick introduction because most of the speaking will be done by Jim from the Audit Findings Report. We handed the draft accounts across to the auditors on the 16th of July, and since then the auditors have been undertaking an audit and have now produced their audit findings report, which is at Appendix A to the report. As part of the accounts, there were two major changes to the numbers in the accounts. One was an adjustment of 2 million between long-term and short-term borrowing, which doesn't change the overall level of borrowing, just the incidence between short-term and long-term. And the other one was a change in the level of assets in the pension fund, where the pension fund actuary revised their value of the assets following their audit. So they had understated the value of the assets as at the 31st of March. So we've made those two changes, and then there are other like typographical and changes for clarification throughout the accounts. And the report has 4 recommendations. One is that the audit findings report be considered. 2, that the management representation letter be considered and approved. The statement of accounts be approved, and that authority be delegated to use the Chair of Audit and Ethics Committee and the Chief Financial Officer's electronic signatures. I'll pass you across to James from the Grant Thornton, who will go through the audit findings report, which covers their review of our accounts.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin, for that introduction. So following the communication of our audit plan earlier in the summer, as Martin pointed out, this is our audit findings report. If you just follow me on to page number 44 of the agenda pack, which is titled Headlines, I'll take you through the executive summary and assume the report's been read, but draw out some key points for members' attention. So hopefully you'll all be aware, we communicated at the end of September that the audit was delayed. I'm pleased to report now that our work is substantially complete and we hope to sign off in due course. As Martin pointed out, we have identified 2 adjustments primarily that have had an overall impact of 6.6 million on the Council's comprehensive income and expenditure statement. In terms of the outstanding work listed on page number 44 of the agenda pack, we are still in discussions with the valuer and completing our work around the valuations of land buildings, council dwellings and other assets. We've now completed our review of the management's assessment of going concern, and then the final 2 points, receipt of management representation letter and review of the final financial statements will follow in due course. The upshot of all this is that we anticipate being able to issue an unqualified opinion on the financial statements, which is great news and it's where you want to be. Just over the page, we come on to value for money work, and we note there that our work in that area is ongoing. The National Audit Office have actually extended the deadline for completion of this work in 2021 in recognition of the significant additional amount of work required and the challenges presented by the pandemic. So the deadline for that work is 3 months after the opinion date, but we're hoping to have that wrapped up by December 2021 to go into the new year on a clean slate. As a result of our work, we've not had to exercise any of our statutory powers or duties, and we've not encountered any significant difficulties as a result of audit procedures undertaken. Just pause at this moment just to offer my thanks to John and Martin and the wider rugby team for their efforts and support in what have been challenging circumstances in getting the audit over the line. On page number 48 of the agenda pack, we revisit significant risk areas identified in our audit plan. So these are the areas that we drew out for specific or focused audit attention. And the report summarises some of the key procedures that we performed and then a commentary and conclusion on any of our findings. So in terms of the risk around fraud in revenue recognition, we mentioned at the audit planning stage that risk had been rebutted, and our conclusion around that risk assessment hasn't changed. Over the page, we refer to the presumed risk of management override of controls, which is, as I say, presumed to be present in all entities and cannot be rebutted. The focus of our work in this area looks at journal entries as they're perceived to be the main vehicle whereby management could perpetrate fraudulent misreporting. We haven't identified any issues from our work that would indicate any instances of actual or suspected management override of controls. However, as Martin noted in the intro, we have raised one control deficiency in relation to potentially privileged access of senior ICT staff to the financial systems and the fact that that increases the risk of management override of control. Over the page, we move on to the significant risk around evaluation of land and buildings and investment properties. As noted in the executive summary, we're still concluding our work in this area, but we don't foresee any significant issues. We've noted there that the valuations performed for the vast majority of the council's assets were reported on a material uncertainty basis. We'd initially challenged this as it was our expectation that the market had now become broadly active again, and therefore that we wouldn't be expecting necessarily to see these caveats in valuers' reports as at the 31st of March 2021. However, we've established that the valuations were actually undertaken in April of 2021, and therefore these are appropriate. And to that end, we've included an emphasis of matter paragraph in our auditor's report this year, again consistent with last year, just to draw a user's attention to this point of fundamental importance. But I stress that our auditor's report is not modified or qualified in this respect. Just finally then, on the significant risk areas, we outline the valuation of the pension fund net liability to be a significant risk just based on the material value in the balance sheet and the underlying assumptions being highly complex and volatile to change. As a result of audit findings communicated to us by the auditor of the Warwickshire Pension Fund, there was effectively a material adjustment at the fund level. Assets were understated, and that has had a sort of a ripple effect on admitted bodies, significant admitted bodies such as Rugby Borough Council. That led to a revised pension valuation, which, as Martin alluded to, has effectively decreased the net liability through an increase in asset value, but has had no impact on the cost of services. And so I'd like to sort of stress the point that this wasn't a misstatement that we'd found of the council's doing, but rather an update of the accounts based on more current information available to us. In terms of new issues and risks identified, I won't dwell on these, but we've raised one recommendation in regard to the methodology applied to calculate the bad debt provision. We're comfortable this figure in the accounts is materially correct, but the methodology might not be in compliance with the accounting standards. And then also we've identified a number of other lower level IT control deficiencies, but none of which we deem to be significant or have impacted on our audit approach. Over the page, the following few pages provide a bit more information on key estimates and judgments in the accounts, and nothing there I'd really draw out to members' attention. As noted in the executive summary, the value for money work is ongoing, and we provide just a brief summary of where we're up to at the moment in terms of our risk assessment, the work we plan to do, and we will come back to the next audit committee, hopefully with our annual auditor's report, which will provide a commentary on the arrangements in place at the council. Pages 63 and 64 of the report confirm our independence as auditors and set out for for transparency, fees paid to us for non-audit services in the period, the relevant threats, ethical threats, and the safeguards in place, which lead us to conclude that we're still remain independent as the council's external auditor. The following pages, appendices, should I say, A to G, set out our audit fees, a little bit more detail around the adjustments to the financial statements that we spoke about, the minor disclosure changes identified, and those control recommendations noted in regard to system access levels, ICT, control environment, as well as the revisitation of the bad debt provision methodology. I'll probably stop there, Chair, but happy to take any questions that anyone may have on the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and you, Martin, sorry as well, thank you. Could I start? So I've just got a couple of questions for you, Martin, to start with, if I can. So the 2 million adjustment, the long-term borrowing to short-term borrowing, is that just a cosmetic adjustment, so it's not actually impacting on our ability to deliver services?
Chair, yes, it is just a cosmetic adjustment because we've got a detailed cash flow, and when we were pulling the accounts together, it's just somebody made an error and included it in long term rather than short term. So they made a mistake on the spreadsheet. So we've built it into cash flows.
Thank you. And sorry, Martin, the second one for you was around the bad debt issue. So Jim has raised the issue that we haven't calculated it correctly, but it's not believed to be material. So can you just explain what the error is, the way we should have calculated it?
The way it was calculated is looking backwards at the historic levels of non-payment, because we know that some people don't pay the debt, so they look at how much debt was outstanding in the period it was outstanding for. A new accounting standard was introduced 2-3 years ago, IFRS 9, to do with financial instruments, and that forces you to look forward. So rather than looking backwards at how much is outstanding, it's making you recognise that even debts raised today, you know that some of those people aren't going to pay. And it's making an assessment of the level. So you should be looking at forward saying, this is the amount of debt I've got. We think these people won't pay, rather than looking backwards and saying, this is the amount outstanding that's overdue, and based on that. So it's looking forward. And whilst the methodology has changed, we wouldn't expect a significant difference in the level of bad debt provision. Because even though, say, debt's over a year old, and we'd normally provide, say, 100% for that, we know that we will get some of the money through some of the chasing action that we do, but we just do a blanket figure. And none was allowed for the debt that's been currently raised, but we know there will be a small element there. So it swings and roundabouts in a way, but we should change the way we do it, and we are going to address that.
Thank you, Martin. And the final one for you, Martin and John, I guess, is on page 37 of Jim's report. He sets out the recommendations. So at a subsequent meeting, we'll see our response to those, will we? The actions that we're going to take to address those recommendations.
Sorry, Chair, is that the management responses? Yes. So yeah, what we will do at the next Audit and Ethics Committee, we will present to the committee our management responses to those suggestions.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't want to hog it for too long. Jim, just a couple for you then. On page 59, you mentioned the work on going concern is ongoing. I just wondered if there was an update on that.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I might not have been cleared. That work is cleared now, so that has been that's completed and signed off. So management provided their assessment of going concern. Correct me if I'm wrong, Martin. Based broadly on the medium-term financial plan, and we've had a look at that. And there's various trains of thoughts around local government, local authority going concern, but practice note 10 really sets out that it would be highly unexpected that a local authority would be classed as not a going concern if there's any sort of unless there's an indication that services would not continue to be provided even in another or a successor sort of body. So we've had a look at management's assessment, and we're comfortable that the accounts have been prepared on an appropriate basis, and there's no issues that we need to bring to your attention on that perspective.
Thank you, Jim. Sorry I missed that when you covered that. And the final one from me, Jim, for you. On page 49, you raised the issue about the journals and the ability of an individual in the IT team to process those. So I know you've said it in the report, but I just want to have it on record, but the testing that you did on those didn't find any concerns.
So the testing had identified journals that were posted by this individual, but we'd looked at those in detail and were comfortable that there was nothing untoward or any indications of management override of control. The control recommendation in itself is acknowledges that this is probably a best practice point, and that we do understand there is sometimes a necessity in these individuals having those access levels and being involved in the financial process, and therefore we only recommend that the council look at it from a best practice control point of view, and I suppose for members' comfort as well, as we're aware of it, if nothing were to change, for example, we would always factor that into our approach to journals testing going forward, as we've identified it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, that was it from me. Open it up, Councillor Mystery.
Thank you, Chair. Just go back to the second point you raised to ask Mark. When you talk about bad debt, at what point you decide, that some people are not going to pay, and who determines that it's a write-off? At what point,
I'll take that one, Chair. We've got a write-offs policy, so we will continue to look to recover a debt until it's impractical to collect it. So I know with some of the write-offs that go to cabinet at the moment, it's often if it's a business, it's gone insolvent, or it's a previous tenant who can no longer have any contact details for, or maybe the person's deceased. So that it's a very extreme case where we would not continue to chase that debt before any write-off.
Thank you, Chair. In the auditor's report, page 12, there's mention of the asset, the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Centre. I was just interested to know when a potential material change to its value has been mentioned. Are we to know whether this potentially is something that is going to, the value will decline rather than increase? And if so, can that be expanded on by any of the officers? I think what we're sort of looking at here is the knowledge of whether we need as a council to spend in the next financial year, and just some knowledge of whether that's coming up. Thank you, Chair.
So we have actually had it revalued as part of this year's accounts as well, because it is big, and if anything, it's gone up marginally. It's gone up, but only a small amount. So nothing material. Else we would have had to change the accounts.
From an audit perspective, we're interested in whether the value as at the balance sheet date recorded in the accounts is appropriate. We perform benchmarking exercises to national average market data, and it can sometimes indicate where assets might be materially different to the value that they're held with. So, for example, with the Queen's Jubilee Centre, I'm not sure when it was last revalued, but a couple of years ago. And therefore, if the indices suggest that it could have gone up materially, we perform some further investigation, challenge of management, and it just so happens that this particular asset was actually revalued from the 1st of April, I believe is correct, and that full valuation confirmed that it hadn't actually changed significantly, so it wasn't a concern for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's useful to know.
Thank you. Any other questions for John, Martin or Jim? No? Okay. So I guess I'll just finish off then. So importantly, it was pleasing to note there were only the 2 adjustments to the account. So well done for the team pulling the draft accounts together and then subsequently the final set. You've explained those differences, so we understand about the 2 million now, and we understand how the 6 million pension issue arose. So thank you for explaining that. So I guess finally, just thanks, Martin, to you and your team, or John, Martin and your team for pulling the accounts together. And thank you also, Jim, for you and your team for providing the audit and your report, which is very clear and comprehensive. Okay, so the recommendations, let me just go back. So the recommendations, we note the audit findings report, which we've just done. The management representation letter be considered and approved. The statement of accounts be approved, and the authority to use the Chair of Audit and Ethics and CFO's electronic signatures. So are we content to someone to propose those recommendations?
Yeah, I'll propose, Chair.
Okay, and a second. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then to vote on the recommendation. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, thank you. Let me just go back, see where we are. Okay, so item 7. Sorry, I've lost my track where I was. Item 7. So the motion to exclude the public under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972. So to consider passing the following resolution. That
It's an item 6,
oh,
Chair.
I'm sorry. Sorry, I told you I was muddled. Yeah, no, thank you. No, thank you for pointing it out. So item 6, let me just go back to where I should be. Okay, thank you. So is this, John, is this you or is this Jim again? Or have we covered it by default in the...
I was just going to say, Chair, this report has largely been superseded by the audit findings report. It was provided at the end of September when we knew the opinion would be delayed to give members an update as to where we are in progress. So nothing that's included in here isn't covered in the audit findings report, other than the fact at the back of the report there is some sector developments and updates just for members' information, and it also includes an appendix in regard to the extension of the value for money deadline and our communication of that to members.
Okay, thank you, Jim. On that basis, are we happy? Sorry, John.
Sorry, Chair, just to come in. I thought I attached this report to the agenda tonight because when the actual update came through from the Grant Thornton colleagues, I sent it through to you all separately as an update because there wasn't a meeting scheduled. So the purpose of this is just to make sure from a transparency perspective, the public have got the opportunity to see the papers that were shared with you separately.
Thank you, John. That's fine. That's clear. So on the basis that we've covered the contents of this in the audit findings report, are we happy with the recommendation that we just note this report? Is someone happy to propose and second? Yeah, okay. And then vote, please. Thank you. Right, now item 7. So agenda item 7, motion to exclude the public under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972. So to consider passing the following resolution, that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the ground that they involve the likely disclosure of information defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 and schedule 12A of the Act. So I'll propose passing that motion, and could I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Byrne. And could we vote on that then, please? Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, so could I ask IT to stop the live stream, please?